Very quickly, why do you think, so for example, 20% of engineering graduates are women, but only 14% of actual engineers are women. Why do you think this disparity actually happens? Do you think it starts from a young age, or maybe it's the culture in the industries or in the universities? I know we've talked tangentially about it, but what are your thoughts on this topic?
Well, this actually happened to me. So I graduated geology in Australia in 1999 or something like that. And there were no jobs for geologists. The only geologists from my course that got hired were men. Not a single woman got hired that year because it was a scarce market, and when they went down the list, they picked boys' names first, and that's just the way it was, unfortunately, back then. So I was very lucky. I had got into the graduate program at BP. And my first banquet job, I landed in the advertising department, and I was suddenly making TV ads. It was awesome, right? And then the next thing they gave me as a project, I was managing motorsport for Australia. So I got to travel all around Australia. You know, when the Formula One drivers came to town, that was my job. It was awesome. So I think partly I think for some people, particularly for me, and I think Sharon might have this experience, I was good at science and math all the way through school. So I kind of got steered in a particular direction by the careers counsellors. You know, you're good at science and math, you should do this. So I went to a science degree. And as I was going through my science degree, the things I was actually really interested in were like the student societies. So I was also the president of the Geological Student Society, which meant communicating and marketing our programs and, you know, doing stakeholder management and all these other interesting things that I really love. That experience got me the interview at BP. And then when I was talking to the people who were recruiting for marketing, they actually didn't care that I didn't have a marketing degree. They looked at they said, check the box, she's got a degree. We want to know that you're smart, and that's what the degree proves. But we also want to know that you have the capability and the passion to actually make a go of this job as a trainee. So then there was on-job training for 2 years. So I partly suspect that for some of the women that are going into these courses, it's not that they're deliberately dropping out of engineering. It's because they had their smarts. They also had other interests and passions, and they've purely just gone and followed those particular passions.
On that point, actually, when you're talking about how you went into things like marketing, even though you've done a STEM degree, do you think that the STEM degree is actually transferable to the other types of industries?
Okay, extremely so. I have given so much advice to my friends, colleagues, anyone that will listen over the years about the importance of a background in science, right? Because I think part of the thing in terms of the background in science, it teaches you great problem-solving skills and really good critical thinking. It also means that you know how to set up an experiment. And interestingly in marketing, we're always doing A/B experiments. We do data all the time. And so for a lot of the parts of that discipline, I've actually found it relatively straightforward. And the advice that I then give to my team is about frameworks, setting up experiments, how we actually get process improvement, those sorts of things, which seem like really nerdy concepts when you're trying to make an ad, right? An advertisement, but it actually works.
I want to pick up on the transferable skills. So it also goes back to the statistic that you gave earlier. Why don't the statistics match up? And I think it's again simply because a degree in science, a degree in STEM is actually transferable. So analytical skills, numeracy, problem solving, being able to come up with a hypothesis, organise your thoughts in a logical manner, present your arguments, come up to a conclusion. All those are valuable life skills that one can apply in many, many jobs. And just to throw out another statistic, when I was studying chemistry, as I mentioned, when 4 years later, when everyone was graduating, 25% of those chemists went to become accountants.
And I think just going back to your previous question, Nisha, about the statistics and the decline, so you see a drop of the graduates and actually being in those roles in engineering. Look, I think it goes back also to that leaky pipeline as well. So I think there are circumstances in one's life, or there are particular gateways. So whether you graduate from university, or whether you're embarking on a career, or you're thinking, well, I don't really like this organisation, or what if I work for a different company. I think at all those steps, potentially there are circumstances that might discourage, I think, women from, I think it's the resilience thing as well that you spoke about earlier on, Leonie, as well, which I think it's, for that reason, it's so important to, and actually this is irrespective of whether you're a female or male, is to make sure you have really strong support networks out there in the industry. And this could be either fellow university students, this could be people in the industry, in the company. Make sure you have those support networks all throughout your career, because certainly if I think about my personal experience, it's been invaluable having someone as a sounding board when I've had to make a hard decision. When I knew that I was at a fork in a road and I had to choose one direction or the other, it really was so helpful in that decision-making process.
There's one little point I wouldn't mind making, was I completely forgot. Role modelling and the role of the media. So I know TWF has done a lot of work on this here with the She Objects video, but on the computer science front, Google actually globally works with the Gina Davis Institute. And the Gina Davis Institute was set up by Gina Davis, the Hollywood movie actress. I don't know whether some of you have heard of this. Has anyone heard of the Gina Davis Institute? Excellent. Good. So the Gina Davis Institute, Gina got a bit upset about the roles that she couldn't see for women. And then she started this institute to look at how women are actually portrayed in Hollywood. And typically a female role in Hollywood is love interest, somebody's mother, or the deranged psychopathic killer, right? That's a lot of the female lead roles in Hollywood. So then she started all of this analysis in terms of what actually happens if media can change the positive portrayal of women in the media, right? So can we work with script writers, can we work with Hollywood directors, can we actually start to change this narrative for what young girls and boys see as they're growing up through media? So we've actually influenced shows like Silicon Valley to try and get them to have more positive portrayals of women, by putting a female coda into the show. If you look at the stats in the US, everybody should know CSI, the CSI type shows. Since those shows have been airing in the US, there's actually a huge difference in the number of girls who are applying to be forensic scientists. And they're actually attributing that to the positive role model that they're seeing in the media. Because the show's super popular, and think about it, it's always girls that are forensic scientists, aren't they? So what we're trying to do then is actually think about, through the media, can we show that these are real, they're real careers, they're rewarding careers, they're fun careers that the girls can actually have. Because Gina Davis actually has this fantastic expression. She says, if you can't see it, you can't be it. And I think that's part of the thing. So, even coming to Google on the weekend as you're doing the shop, seeing how, you could potentially see yourself in some of these careers, whether you're a girl or a boy, but also through parents, through friends, through what television, through what YouTube or anything else will actually tell you. We need to get more of that positive portrayal out there.
Thank you all so much. I think that's all the time we have for the panel discussion right now. But I'd like to pass the floor over to the audience and see if they have any questions for the panelists today.
So you spoke a lot about creating a positive culture. What do you believe that quotas have a good effect on creating a positive culture, or would they potentially be negative?
At Telstra, we actually have gender diversity targets, and we recently also introduced them on a country level as well. And we introduced the targets at different leadership levels. And I can say we're well below from a leadership perspective. So if I give you an example, in the HR department in Australia, about 75% at the leadership level are female. If you look at the operations departments, so these are the engineers, the developers, etc., I think 15% are female at that leadership level. To your question, do I believe that targets or quotas? I think the targets that we have, they're actually reported in the annual company board report, and the leaders are actually, it's part of their success metrics as well. And I think only by doing that will you start to see the focus and the change. Now, the question about quotas, I think, is slightly different. So quotas is like mandated, whereas targets is this aspirational, yes, you measure it and so on. Quotas, I have very mixed feelings about, so I'll be very curious to hear from my panelists, because I personally do not want to be talked about as you're only here in this position because you're a female and we have to fill a quota. I certainly do not want that, because fundamentally I believe it's about a level playing field, and that's what we're trying to achieve. You know, getting more females in that pipeline and retaining it so that they're at a more competitive playing field, as opposed to shoehorning, you know, female staff into certain roles.
That's a very good question. So I think it also depends on what your starting point is. So if you don't measure it, management are not going to act on it. So you've got to show statistics. You have to show this is what our organisation looks like today. This is what we want our organisation to look like tomorrow. And in order to do that, I think you do have to put some numbers down. You will have to put some quantitative numbers down. In terms of, is there an upper limit where, you know, what is the final result? Is it 50-50? Is it 90-10? You know, how does it work? Well, I also see it, organisations have to be agile, and they also have to be adaptable. So in some years you'll have on the management board, for example, 80% of the positions filled by women at top level, and then in a couple of years' time it could be the other way around. So it's almost like a pendulum. But again, in terms of, I'm a big fan of measuring data, because I think people and organisations need to own the issue first to be able to recognise it, so then they can act on it.
I think similar targets versus quotas. We prefer to have targets, but it also depends on the society. So from a country perspective, if you look at Norway, I think it was, it introduced a quota, and they now have 40% women on boards in that country. The leading countries in the world in terms of equality for women, ironically, are the ex-communist states. It's Russia and China. China was the first place in the world where women actually reached 50-50 in middle management. It's the unintended consequence of the one-child policy. It's also the unintended consequence of Mao's dictum, which is women hold up half the sky. Right? What I also say inside Google in terms of a diversity and inclusion lens is women hold up half the sky, but out of those 10 fingers, one of them is probably gay, by the way. So when we're actually, because that's the global statistic on LGBTI, it's actually around about 10% of the naturally occurring population. So we use a lot of those sort of stats to talk about some of these challenges and to just try and get more of a conversation going rather than thinking about a quota per se. But it really is country dependent because some cultures are very far behind. India is a classic example. Japan is very similar. After women have children in those countries, less than 38% of them will ever go back to full-time work because the societal pressure says you must stay at home. Very different to Hong Kong. Female representation here is very high. In Australia, the number's about 57% of women will actually go back to full-time work after having children. So there's a whole bunch of different things that will end up impacting what actually happens at a leadership level in the generations to go. So it's a tough one on quotas versus target, but we got target.
Thank you for all of your inputs into that question. It was a pretty interesting question. So unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today, but please feel free to stay behind and ask the panelists questions if you're interested. Can we please give a big thank you to the And before we go, I have some gifts from the school to present to the panelists. actually go into with the sciences and what the opportunities and possibilities actually are for you. So, for example, you don't necessarily have to do a marketing degree to work in marketing, just because of all those transferable skills. So I hope this talk has been really useful to you guys, and yeah.